Okay, my lovely, after much experimentation with the little mini Vivor and some adaptations, I'm ready to show you what I've discovered makes the throwing easier. Bear in mind though, this is not the same technique you would use on a bigger wheel. For one, you have to scale everything down. Your hands can't center and cone up in the same way. You have to use your fingertips and relying on a few more tools instead of your fingers when these little digits are too big. Everything's scaled down, even the sponge. So the only other thing you would need that you may not have in your starter kit of tools is a little piece of fishing line. So this thin fishing line is much better for getting the pots off the wheel head than a traditional potter's wire. This is just too thick. So let's get started. So it seems preparation for this little beastie is absolute key. So whatever you're going to work on, get that set up first. So I'm going to put down a little silicone mat here, and this stops the little wheel moving around as much. Also, we've put in some new washers under the feet so that the base of the container is stronger and it's more level. We've also made a little splash tray barrier out of some shelf plastic, and that has stopped the tray from wobbling around as much, and it means you can actually rest the sides of your fingers or your hands on that tray now. It also prevents some of the leakage of water going between the gap and down where the head of it is, which also protects the electrical at the front. I've just fed the electrical cable up behind the wheel just by popping it between the legs here, just like that. So we're trying to protect the electricals, have a stable surface in which to work on. Next up is leveling the wheel, because if you're having trouble centering, it could be that the wheel is not leveled. Now you can do this without the tray on, or I just push the tray down because the tray is not level, and I'm just testing the level of the head itself. And this way it's perfectly level. Push that tray down out of the way, and this way it is not. It needs to be raised up at the back. So I've got some little post-it notes, and it's nothing to do with the wheel this time, it's to do with my bench. My bench apparently is not level. And let's see, that was a bit too much. Unfold the postie. Let's see. So fiddle with it until you get it just so. I'm going to take a couple of posties off there. Fold that under. That's much better. Little posties. If you know you're going to use your wheel in the same place all the time, you can set it up so it's level. Not quite enough. One more. So you could add an extra washer to the feet or glue on a little piece of cork, whatever it is. It does look like the feet are a good way to adjust the wheel. However, when we did that, the base of the wheel actually came off where all the mechanics are. So that was not good either. Perfect. So remember, you're not leveling the tray, you're leveling the wheel head. Also discovered the bigger wheel head is not as good as this smaller one. It's just so much wider on that small pivot in the middle that the wheel slows down a lot more with the bigger one on, and you can throw still quite big on this little one. You can go right to the edge, or if you're making a bowl, you could go over the edge. This wheel can't take much clay, so the little one is probably perfect for everything that you're going to be able to throw on here. So now you're ready to go. Tools, I've just got a mini sponge. I've got a palette knife. This is how I found to lift the pots off when they're finished. I've got my fishing wire to cut the pot off the wheel head. And really, I'm using more wooden sticks than anything else, and a couple of dental tools. I love this little dental flosser and that is brilliant for trimming off an uneven rim. And I got a little bit of bamboo. So I would say the key ones there is a little piece of wood, piece of floss, and let's say one of these has a rounded bum. I think it's this one. Yes, it is. So either a stick with a rounded bum or just a paintbrush that's got a rounded bum. So these are the key tools for making your job easier. Okay. When it comes to clay, I would say smoother clay the better. So no grog, simply because you're working on such small areas that any grog is going to show up in the rim and so on and so forth. Pre-softened. So I've had this wrapped in a damp towel and in plastic for a while now, a number of days, and it's nice and soft. The reason you want softer clay rather than firmer clay is because this wheel head slows down completely if you have to put too much pressure on it. The firmer the clay, the more pressure you need. So this is going to make probably, let's see, I think we could easily get 4, possibly more out of here. Yes, I think we're going to get 6. There's some nice variety in sizes here. Some of our hair has got in there. Okay, so although you can't wedge this up because it's too small to wedge, and well, it makes it challenging to wedge, I would just say you still want to squash it about to wake the clay up, and you don't want to put air in it. So all I'm doing here, and you can also bash it on the table. Otherwise, I'm just pushing it between my fingers and waking it up. I'm going to keep these other pieces wrapped up while I'm throwing this. Because everything's so much smaller, it dries out faster. So here we have a nice little piece. It still feels pretty dry actually. Just the smallest of water on the bottom of the clay. I'm not throwing the clay down, I'm pushing the clay into place, pushing it down, keeping that cone shape, and then turning the wheel as I'm doing that. So, already getting my cone started. So this is the attachment stage. First of all, we need the clay to stay attached to the wheel. It sounds easy, but with these little wheels, it's not as easy as you'd think. I'm getting just the tip of my finger wet, and I'm going to just sort of bring that around there, sticking it to the base, and I'm pretty much ready to get started. So now it's attached. It's still dry. I'm still dry. Just going to wet my sponge and then lightly dribble over the top. Get my fingertips ready. So these are going to be instead of my hands. I'm not going to center by pushing down and in with my hands. I'm not going to cone by using the heel of my hands to bring the clay up. I'm going to do all that with my fingers. And because they're longer and not so muscular, resting your hands on that spray pan actually helps. So that's why it needed to be secure. So we're going to switch it on, and we're going to go anti-clockwise if you're right-handed. Now you can hear it's going to get loud, and if I wet my fingers at that speed, the wheel slows down a lot. So you do have to go a little faster than you would imagine, because your hands and the pressure of the clay is actually going to slow it. So I've got my damp sponge, not bringing out much water, just because my fingers will dry fast. I'm going to be pushing down with one hand or with one lot fingers, and these fingers are just stopping it from going out. Just a bit of pressure from the top and a bit of pressure from the side. So I'm trying to maintain a good shape to build my base from, but at the same time I do need to center the clay, and I want the clay to work. So all I'm doing here is pushing on the clay where there's lumps. I'm pushing it down when I want it to go down, and I'm giving it a little upward momentum when I want it to go up. Just rinsing my sponge for no other reason other than I don't like the ickiness in the way. I'm doing the same again. My thumb is actually keeping it from going up, and my fingers are keeping it from going out. Okay. Not too much water in there. Now, before I made the little protector sheet underneath, I was constantly mopping out water out of the splash pan. You probably don't need to now that that protective sheet is under there. Right, I'm going to push down now. Not going too fast, going with the speed of the wheel. The biggest challenge is when you try to throw the speed of the wheel, so your movement's up and down at the same pace as it's going around, is very challenging on this wheel because it goes at one speed here, and then when I put any pressure on, it slows down, and you can hear the motor struggling. So the wheel doesn't stay at a consistent speed. So that's as centered as I'm probably going to get this little one. Let's clean it off so you can see it. I've also found standing up and working over the wheel is more helpful for me, but you may wish to sit down, whatever. I'm just going to use this little wooden tool to get some slip off the side and just to take that skirt away a little. Yeah. That way we can see where it's centered and where it's not a little easier, especially for the camera. And you see it's pretty centered. So I'm going to go back to just wetting my fingertips. I'm not really going to add much water now. I'm just going to get it wet, feel it all over. I feel like there's just a piece there that's a bit out of center. You can know when it is because your finger will jump up and down a little bit, whereas when it's centered, it won't. Okay. I'll stop aiming for perfection for a minute. Whew, that's loud. So next up is we've attached, we've centered, and now we need to open it up. So we start that by making a hole in the middle. Now my fingers are pretty big. If I try and open up with my middle finger, there'll be nothing of the pot left. I tried with my little finger, but I didn't have the same strength or ability to control it. So what I found instead is the end of a paintbrush, or I've got this round little dowel rod. See that little roundness there? So I'm going to get it very wet so it doesn't stick to the clay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight down. And I want to make sure that when I go straight down, I go slowly and I don't go as far as the whole wheel, the pot, otherwise it'll have no base. So what I'm seeing here is my pot is this thick. So I'm just going to bring it up. I'm only going to go down that thick for now. See? That'll leave me quite a bit of room, but I know over time I'll go down further. So I'm going to speed it up. I'm going to put my hand on the splash pan and I'm going to steady my other hand, because the wheel's going to want, and the clay is going to want to move this stick where I don't want it to go. So I'm just going to put it in the middle, and ever so gently while the wheel is spinning, I'm pushing it down. And then I'm going to bring it up, make sure it's got some water on there, go down a little further, and then I'm going to stop when it hits my fingers, because I know that leaves me a good foot if I want to carve a foot later on. I also know when I've been opening these up, I tend to push down further as I go, so I want to have enough room that I can push further. So here's my hole is there, but now I need to open it out. And this is where it can go off center. So I'm going to wet my thumb and fingers, and this side I'm going to protect. This side I'm going to put my stick back in, or paintbrush. Get my finger wet again, thumb wet again. And I'm going to very gently and slowly pull that stick towards my thumb, and my thumb is saying, okay, I can help you, but I'm going to stop you pushing it too far out. And I do have to speed up for this because the motor is struggling. So I'm pulling the stick towards my thumb, and my thumb is making sure, as best as it can, it's not going too far off. Now, I'm going to compress the rim. So we've got an opening now. You may have gone off center a bit, so just use your fingers, hold them there. Feel any lumps, let it just rest there. And it'll go back on center. I'm going to compress that rim. And you might not be able to see it, but I've got a little bump on the inside, so I'm going to just put my finger in and push down on that bump. There we are, I got it. And that's because as I pulled the stick towards my thumb, clay came up the back of the stick, and so it's created a little mountain in the middle. So, compressing the rim. And my wall is currently that thick. And of course that's too thick for what we want, but look how much clay we have to work with. So we attached it to the wheel head, we centered it, we've opened it and started to open it so the wheels are where we want them to be, and now we want to go up and thin out the walls and get more height as we can. So I'm going to get my fingers wet. Got my sponge here too, and what I'm just going to do is with my fingertips, I'm just pushing in at the 6 o'clock mark ever so gently, just to collar it in a little, because as I pull up the wheels it's going to want to open out more and more. Right. Get that wall wet, turn down, try not to have too much water on your hands when you're touching these controls. It's you might even want a little towel beside you that you could just touch your fingers on like that before you play with those controls. Okay, so I've got my finger on the inside, I've got my thumb on the outside, I've got my other finger on the very top, and what I'm going to do is just gently push in my thumb, and ever so gently and slowly I'm pulling up and pushing in. See that? So I'm doing that. There we go again. You can hear the wheel slowing down. Let me turn it up a little. You don't want the wheel too fast or it will just fling the clay outwards and off. I'm going to compress the rim again. You see it start to wobble. Just go in at that 6 o'clock and give it some gentle, slow pressure. Follow it in a little. And the top, and that will hopefully bring it up. And this time, because I can feel there's a bulge, I'm just going to push gently with the outside and the inside finger, as if I was squishing a mosquito without wanting to kill it. And I'm actually going down. So this is where it really differs from throwing on a bigger wheel. You really have to work with the wheel. Okay. So now I've got a nice shape. I'm still fairly centered. And now I'm going to pull up, whoops, fingers. You can use the slip on your fingertips or water. And we're going to pull up again. I might try a smaller finger here. So I'm tipping my index finger under. Push in from the inside and the outside ever so gently. Don't squash the mosquito. Come up, not too fast. Get to the top. Reduce the pressure. Bring your fingers away. Right. Compress the rim. It's always the same. Collar it in a bit if it started to flare out. Just go over that with my fingertips to see how we're doing thickness wise. And get it a little damp from your sponge. It's not too much water. And I'm going to go down again just so that I can feel any unevenness. Alright. Compress the rim. It's ever so gentle. It's as if you're petting a mosquito now to compress the rim. It's a nice even wall. I'm going to put my index finger in and under a little. And now I'm going to turn it slowly, and the inside finger is pushing out a little bit more than it has been. And I'm going to get to about here and I'm going to swap. The outside finger is going to push in slightly and the inside one's just guiding it. And come off and press the rim. Right, so you see we're starting to get some shape here now. And we have to decide what shape we want. Now I can see from looking inside, this bottom bit is really thick. So it has a narrow inside and a wide outside. So I'm going to go in and squeeze it one more time. Bring that lump of clay up by pushing my fingers together. And then I'm going to relax my fingers because there's not as much clay at the top. That was a thick lump at the bottom. There we are. That's much better. Now, this is where it gets challenging if you're doing a tall piece. I want to get the water out at the bottom. And soon I won't be out of reach. So, normally you would finish a pot on the wheel, let it dry a little, and then you would trim it back on the wheel a day or two later when it's leather hard, or if you're in a warm studio, warm climate, you could do it a few hours later. But you wouldn't normally do it when the clay is this wet. However, what I've discovered is it's hard to get, once this is off the wheel, it's hard to get it back on a wheel. So what I'm going to do here, actually that little shaped wooden tool was really good. I'm going to slow it down. I'm going to start trimming now. So I'm putting the little wooden knife against the pot, making sure I'm steady, and I'm turning it in where I know I've got more clay until I hit the wheel head. Now I'm going to take that little bit off. Oh, I went up instead of down. Come on. There we go. Come on. There.
So you have to keep your hands as steady as possible because the wheel and the clay will want to take the tool with them, and you might not want it to go where it wants to take it. I'm just getting some slip off the outside. And you notice I've got this hand resting, my arm is resting on the table, and I'm using these as stabilizers for this hand and this tool. So it's not that you need a lot of strength here, it's just, are your hands stable enough? So I'm just going to tidy up that rim too. I'm going to check the inside. Now my inside finger is going to push out gently, and my outside is just going to stop it pushing out too far. I'm going to give this a little belly, and then my outside finger is going to push in, and my inside finger is going to guide it. Did I give it a little belly? So you don't do it all at once, or your clay will just have a little panic. So you want to do it in stages. My fingers are too big. Okay, so I'm going to just check. We're doing really well at the bottom now. Pushing out with my inside finger. Pushing in with my outside finger. I want to bring in that rim. I can also put some water on there with my tiny sponge. It doesn't take a lot of water for this clay of this size to then absorb too much. Okay, so I've now managed to make the rim wobbly, which is what I was hoping to do to show you my favorite tool, the little floss stick. So it's got a little piece of floss that's already quite taut on there. It's got this nice point at the end too, and a good grip handle. So supporting your hand, and I'm just going to pop it straight down, and when it's gone around enough circles, I lift it up, clean off the clay, and I have a perfectly flat rim again. And I'm just going to compress that, and I want to go in a little bit more, making a smaller neck. Clean it up. How are we looking? Is that not looking like a cute little pot? So, because it's easier to do while it's still on this little wheel, rather than take it off and try and put it back on, we're just going to see, is there any other tidying up needs doing? So I'm going to make sure I can still get under that bottom rim to cut it off. I'm going to gently put it at the side, and I'm at the 6 o'clock mark, so I just want to see where I want to push the clay in or scrape some off. And with this, the other end has got this nice, I might ruin it now, but it's got this nice curve. Let's see if I can collar in that neck a bit with this nice curve, because my fingers are still too big. Oh, we can. Okay. Let's see if I can also use, making sure your wooden tools are wet when they're touching this clay. Okay, get some clay off. There we go. I better stop messing with this before I ruin it. So I'm wringing out my little sponge. It's just nicely damp, making a point to just get in there a little. Tidy up any gribblies, smooth off the rim. Go down the pot, although there's no slip left on it. and we're ready to take it off. You can use a little pointy tool like this to make an even deeper gouge if you're concerned that you're going to slice the pot where you don't want to. And then I found switching it off helps. With your fishing wire, you're going to dunk it in some water, get it a bit wet, you're going to turn it around your fingers so you've got good control over it. And as close to the wheel head, you're scraping along the wheel head. You're just going to bring it around underneath. Now it jumps on that last bit, a little dry mat. To lift it up, this is what I found has been the easiest. Get my palette knife a little wet, stick it underneath, make sure you've got hold of it well, and drop it. Or make sure you've got hold of it well. What I should have done is once I cut it off, I should have made sure my fingertips were dry, put the palette knife under and guided it with the with the palette knife. Darn. Happy making of little minis. You might even have a better way of doing it, but that's what I've found worked. Except the drop-in part. The drop-in part doesn't work. Oh well.